do you have Lakshmikant? Yes. You take it, even if we give notes, but there can be no substitute for Lakshmikant because it is a textbook. This. And for prelims, you have to know very line by line, words by words. This is how you have to know for prelims. Because the words, every sentence that which is original sentence of the polity, it matters in question framing. When UPSC frames questions, so those things become important to know that. Just by framing of question, change in one word, you can guess the question either correct or incorrect, right? So it will help in your basic thing, let's say that, basic. This, as of now, you should read every day. By the time we teach you, it will take time to teach you fundamental rights. Because fundamental rights taking, it will take, at least will take 2 weeks to teach fundamental rights. So 2 weeks you can read a lot. This, because fundamental rights are very technical topics and they are the core aspect of your polity section if you understand, right? So this, plus if you want to go, isse bhi basic, if you want to go that, you have NCERT. This, so we have NCERT. And one NCERT is about constitution. And another NCERT is about democracy. This. So that you should take. If you are not understanding the basics, right? तो अगर ये भी नहीं समझ में आता है, if it does not come, you are not able to understand, so you can take them. So they will teach you very basic level because NCERT level you will be able to understand the basic things. This anyhow, let's say they build your foundation, that nowadays they can bring your strong foundation. If you want to build a strong foundation in this polity, so that is how it is. Why? Because polity is something which nowadays I tell hit rate. This hit rate I say nowadays. So in prelims, your hit rates in polity should be almost 90 to 100%. That should be your target. Even if today you don't have, what is hit rate? The number of questions that you do correct in prelims. This. So today, tomorrow means you will come to know this after some time, but today itself I am telling it. Today itself I am telling this, that this called tomorrow when you will appear in prelims. So there are some of the sections in GS where your hit rate should be over 80%, 90%. Means number of correct questions that you can do. So one is called, let's say that polity. Other is called modern history. This. Then it comes, let's say, economy. Then it comes, this is called this geography plus environment ecology. This you should know. Then other will come. So here you can have hit rate of 80 to 90%. Here you will have hit rate of 80 to 90%. This you will not achieve here. You will be able to having 60 to 70%. And same thing 60 to 70%. This. It means that tomorrow when you appear in prelims, so you'll have to rely for qualifying prelims more and more on polity and modern history. This. Because in this there is a possibility of qualifying, means correcting more questions than in other sections. unless you have your optional like geography and other things. No, this. So it is because of that you have to build a strong foundation. Getting my question? This. Why people do not qualify prelims? Because of these flaws. Right. They don't understand, they prepare by brute force, they don't understand the orientation and techniques of what UPSC, let's say that examination is or what the paper is. This. So that's why it is important. तो आपको ये लगेगा, you may feel कि हमें पढ़ना कितना है, why I should read it. But no, today or tomorrow, if you want to achieve this, you have to read that. So at least 2-3 sections should be so strong that you have the hit rate called probability of correct question that comes to 80 to 90%, even 100%. And then you can be sure about your prelims. That is what you can say this. So that is one aspect. Then why you should read them? To understand what we will teach. Right? Because when we'll teach, our teaching will go, let's say that it is basic, this to advanced, if I say that, 2 level will take, basic to advanced to contemporary if I take it. We will teach basic also, but we'll teach advanced also, and we'll teach contemporary also. Right? So many a time our focus can be on this side. This. It is more mains oriented. Yes. And it is more prelims oriented. So if you have not read, a bit not familiar, so a bit challenge can be when we go to that level. Yes. So that's why let's say that you should focus. What our target is that when we teach, so for mains, let's say that whatever we have written this, for mains, you will have your own class notes, which I dictate very properly. And then you don't have to look elsewhere for that. Mains will be well prepared. This, that way. But for prelims, I'll tell you have to study yourself those things. That should be the strategy. This. Then as far as other things are concerned, let's say this constitution, there is a, let's say government, big, let's say that government has its book, which is called those, let's say that what we say that Bear Act. There is a pocket type small book of the government which gives you about all articles of the, let's see whatever the articles we have. It gives you that. It gives you also some details what has happened in that. Because in literal sense, because in beginning you will have a bit challenge how you know them. Later on it will not be a challenge. So this is also a constitution which we say as Bear Act. That you should have. Now, the notes that we have given, let's say this. You have three, let's say, 3 small books that we have given. They will help you in more, let's say that mains. They will be more mains oriented. This, because there are more short note type. So you can use them as reference when we deal in class. You can read also. Before coming to that, you can read them so that you can understand what I am going to teach that way. So they will guide you in more of a mains type you can consider. That is how it is. So that way you can help, and they are updated, contemporary, etc. They will cover. So they will help you. You will learn also that how basically we have to prepare notes and other things like this. right? This that way we can say plus higher has already, let's see higher, it is by basically Tejul takes higher. This Tejul Khandelwal, this. So I will be dealing largely those sections. It means ki this paper we can say GS paper second, except IR you can say if I take minus IR, if we write, so we can divide one is let's say related to prelims, for which books already we have referred, you can focus on that. Although we'll cover when we teach, so those things are then mains oriented. So it has certain parts, let's say that. One is polity and constitution. Polity and constitution. Second we have is this called governance. The third we say as social justice. This basically this is called core polity, you know this. We say it as core polity. Core polity means traditional polity, that traditional we had polity whatever you can consider, which was part of past syllabus also. But since 2013, this is how I'll find this. So these things were added. Although there are other aspects, they will be covered under this. So these things are, let's say, basically nothing but new, let's say that, new parts of this. The first our focus will be on this core aspect of polity, and this is more technical side, you know this. Technical means that here polity has its own language. This, it has its own terms, etc., which matter a lot when we read. They are more substance type. Substance means ki more analytical type, more macro type, and it is more legal type. This. So next we'll start is very basic. Let's say that we have polity. When we say polity, the polity means basically a system of government. This, the polity deals with a system of government. This. So that is how we say Indian polity. The Indian polity is Indian system of government. This. Now that system of government, you know this, when we talk system of government, this system of government has its own different types and natures. This, let's say that it can be considered, we say it as nature of a state, or if we go like this, nature of a state, right? Type of government. Our is a nature of a state is this. It can be, know that, federal. This, it can be quasi-federal. It can be unitary. This, it can be presidential, and it can be parliamentary, or it can be mixed type. This. This is called system of government. Then further down the line, many things will come. This, so it will go on dealing with nature of state, federal, quasi-federal, unitary, etc. Like say we have US which has presidential system, UK and India which has parliamentary system, France, this Sri Lanka which has this unitary, let's say France, UK when we'll talk one day like this, quasi unitary state. Yes, the India and US. These are some basic things when we talk about polity, let's say the nature of polity, plus there are many other things, right? Now, what is the relation between, let's say, polity and constitution? This, what is the relation between polity and constitution? So, what is the difference between polity and constitution? Is there any difference? Hmm. Hmm. Constitution is written. Polity? Yes. So basically, let's say that what I told these things, how we will govern, right? Whether we will govern through any rule book? No. These things are basically polity is about system of government. Now that system of government should be run through any rule book, or it should be let govern the way government wants. This, so that is how you should know this. So we are trying to further progress. So if you take polity and constitution, this, the polity as we have told that is system of government. Now the question is that whether this government should be let, whether right. So when there is a system of government, then the question comes, this is what, should it be let to govern? Should we leave it undefined and it should govern the way it is? So basically in past you should know that monarchical systems, if you say this, no. Monarchical systems, colonial power, they were largely unwritten? No. Let's say any monarchical system, or let's say even British rule in India, the British rule in India was also, let's say it was governing without any such written documentation. They would have written documentations, but those things may not be that adequate. That you can say that. They may not be that adequate. So largely you will find that, let's say Kautilya time, how it was governed, let's say Akbar time, how they govern. They govern their kingdom, but then let's say they may not have any rule book to govern, let's say this. But modern times, this is how the modern times, the transition phase, it says it should be defined. This modern time says that it should be this. It says that it should be defined. This. So when it should be defined, when it should be defined, this. So to define it, that result gave rise to, right? It gave rise to constitution. It gave rise to constitution. This. So that is how the relationship. So what is the relationship? So constitution is a rule book that guides what? Polity. This is the relationship. So that's why we use polity and constitution. Right? If you write either one, तो उससे काम हो जाएगा. When you write polity, तो it means the same. If you write constitution, it means the same. Right? But still we write polity, constitution. The state is the polity means system of government that is guided by a rule book called constitution. This. So then we have to know about constitution, no other things, blah blah, syllabus mentioned. So that way you can consider. Now, when it is a rule book, this is how constitution. Then again it goes for two aspects, let's say that. A constitution, so constitution can be written or unwritten. This. So constitution can be, this constitution can be unwritten and it can be written. This. So difference क्या है दोनों में? US Constitution is
written, but the Britain Constitution is not.
yes. No, yes. And Indian Constitution is written. So then question comes के written unwritten में difference क्या है? Isn't it?
Both the countries have constitution, but one is written.
Yes, yes. But then कि दोनों में difference क्या है? Isn't it? What is the difference between them? कि क्यों a country has unwritten, why we need written constitution, that aspect, difference we should know. Then question ki, let's that ki, why written constitution or constitution is needed? This,
So for future perspective,
this, and then question is called, let's say, content of constitution. कंटेंट ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. कोई भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन होगा तो उसका कंटेंट होगा. लाइक आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हैज सर्टेन नंबर ऑफ आर्टिकल्स, सम पार्ट्स, सम शेड्यूल्स. राइट. तो व्हाई वी हैव अडॉप्टेड दैट, इजंट इट? एंड देन लेट्स से दैट कि एवोल्यूशन भी होगा इसका. एवोल्यूशन, हाउ इट केम, हाउ इट केम. दिस, जिसको कि हमारे सिलेबस में क्या बोलते हैं? हिस्टोरिकल underpinnings. Right. I'm trying to connect syllabus, you know this. So that way, let's say. So basically, let's say कि we started कि polity. Polity is a system of government, and that system of government should govern by a rule book. It cannot be left to the government to govern the way it wants to. Otherwise, you know what the consequence can be. Even when constitution you have, you know the consequence. When you do not have, then you can see what can happen. When we have constitution, it can be written and written, then it has its own background, that is evolution part, etc., how it came into being, that is called historical being and historical underpinnings. And then let's say features, etc., let's say that. So this that way we'll try to start address our syllabus. Right. So our syllabus mentions this historical underpinnings, features of constitution. This so features of constitution, etc. In this we will talk, let's say, called constitution. What is constitution? Then written, unwritten. Then this what is constitutional supremacy? And then we'll take you historical underpinnings. Historical underpinnings. Evolution. Making of constitution. This features of constitution. This a brief note on working of constitution. This will complete our one part. Yes. this. So let's write on this constitution. What is constitution? So constitution is a legal document. Constitution is a legal document which deals with power structure of government, rights of people, and aims and objectives of state. Next, change paragraph. It is also considered a rule book. Rule book for any polity that defines how a government should govern. Right? Next, it can be written or unwritten. Written or unwritten. This differences. You write two sides, one side unwritten constitution, other side written constitution. This written constitution. This unwritten side, you write. There is no any one legal document. Which works as fundamental law. Known as constitution. Fundamental law known as constitution. This side. There is one written document. Which is known as fundamental law. That is the most supreme law. The most supreme law. Next, second point on unwritten side. There is no deliberate attempt to write and adopt any single legal document. As constitution. It means there would be side by side existence of existence of several legal documents. Several legal documents. Legal documents. Like example, UK. UK. Its constitution. Constitution consists of, let's say, charters, statutes, this conventions, this legal books, legal books, orders. Right? So basically you should know that when any country, like say UK is the only major country that has no unwritten written constitution, but it has constitution. Yes. So constitution, when it has, the difference between written and unwritten constitution is that in case of unwritten constitution, they have no any deliberate attempt made to write any one such law as fundamental law. This. And then that country will have several laws, right? Let's say that which in their language we say charters, statutes, conventions, legal books. Let's say A.V. Dicey we have. A.V. Dicey has written book on rule of law and he belongs to UK. You should also know that most of the constitutional experts, you should know that most of the constitutional experts belong to UK, right? Not, let's say, France or Germany or US, let's say that largely they will belong to UK. So that's why we say as a legal book. You can see this. So any country which does not have, let's say, written constitution, so how that country will be governed? So that country will be governed by a set of laws. This, and that country is UK. But let's see right on this written constitution side. Second point, there is deliberate attempt. There is deliberate attempt to write and adopt a legal document, write and adopt a legal document that can be considered the fundamental law. That can be considered fundamental law. This, the first country was US, which adopted written constitution. Most of the countries have written constitution. Most of the countries have written constitution. Written constitution. So let's take that. Okay, what will happen? In this case, you should know, in this case, so we told that there is no one law. The constitution means a set of things. This, but when we say that written constitution, when we say about written constitution, the written constitution means, let's say that there is only one law, right? One law. This, the law that we have adopted. Like say our constitution was, it came into effect on 26 Jan It is 1950. Basically, it is also a legal document which was signed on. It was signed on this 24th January. But when it was adopted? 26 1949. Right, yes. तो बेसिकली जब ये साइन होता है 24 जनवरी 1950, राइट? तो व्हेन दे हैव साइंड इट ना, व्हेन दे हैव साइंड इट, तो बेसिकली व्हाट इट बिकम्स ए लॉ, राइट? जिस तरीके से मान लो कि कोई भी लॉ पास होता है, जिस रिसेंटली कोई भी लॉ बता दो जो गवर्नमेंट ने पास किया है, राइट? सो सीए, ठीक है, सीए. तो लॉ इज पास्ड, देन प्रेसिडेंट साइंस, प्रेसिडेंट विल, अभी कौन साइन करता है? प्रेसिडेंट साइंस. तो फिर वो लॉ बन जाता है, राइट? यू विल हैव ए सेट ऑफ लॉज, विल हैव सो मेनी लॉज इन आवर कंट्री, but all these laws are subordinate to this law, right? That is called supreme law. The major difference between a country that has written constitution, a country does not have written constitution, is this, that ki written constitution is supreme law and all other laws will be subordinate to that law, that understanding. But in this country, there is no any one supreme law. There can be existence of side by side different types of laws, right? Then question comes ki why you need to write constitution, right? Why we do not follow UK? Why we follow US? Right? Why we follow UK, isn't it? Why? Sorry. So why this question, why UK is not followed? Rather US is followed. This, you should know that democracy and constitution both emerge on UK land. The idea of, you should know that, idea of डेमोक्रेसी. ये और बात है कि आजकल हम अपने देश को बोलते हैं this if you say any country as mother of, means ki land of democracy, it is UK. But nowadays we have started saying ki India is the mother of democracy. But if you take modern times, a liberal democracy which first came, it is UK. And then it spreads to other parts, right? Similarly, let's say the idea of constitution, it is also coming from UK. Right? Why? Because those constitutional scholars, right? So all those constitutional scholars, including Avi, Dicey, they belong to UK. The idea of rule of law idea was given by him, and rule of law is basis of any democracy, any constitution, right? Then why people follow this? Why we have written constitution, not UK, let's say this. So you should know that UK has a different historical evolution. And since it has a different historical evolution, so we cannot match with their standard. This all countries cannot match with UK standards. Plus, we don't want to leave it to the government. You know that. So, even in US, they did not want to leave it to the government. Same thing, we do not want to leave it to the government. The only major factor why you need a written constitution is that we don't want to leave it to the government to decide how to govern. It will bring arbitrariness. So, a written constitution is check on arbitrary exercise of powers. This you should know. And that's why written constitution most of the countries have. And government is guided by this. So when the day a country has written constitution, that country will have supremacy of constitution. Means a constitution will become a supreme document. Other things would become subordinate. That is how the basic aspect. So let's try that. Why a written constitution is needed? A subheading. Why a written constitution is needed? Constitution is needed. In bracket, why a constitution is needed? Why a constitution is needed? Constitution is needed. See, try to understand. When there is a question called why a constitution is needed and why a written constitution is needed, answer will remain same. Try to understand. When we use the term constitution, we presume it is a written constitution. The term constitution. So when you use the term constitution, we do not always keep in mind written and unwritten. But hey, that you should know. The constitution in general is a fundamental law. In general. Only when we start understanding it in a bit details, written constitution, unwritten constitution, then we start differentiating it. That's why I have told to write in bracket also. It means the same thing. When you say relevance, let's write this. A written constitution is needed. A written constitution is needed. A written constitution is needed to ensure that the government does not exercise powers in arbitrary manner. The government does not exercise powers in arbitrary manners. The historical past shows that when there was absence of any such legal document, there was arbitrary exercise of power. There was arbitrary exercise of power. Arbitrary exercise of power. Like US experienced arbitrary exercise of power. This as a colony of UK. Is as a colony of UK. And when it got independence, it adopted a written constitution. It adopted a written constitution so that no organ enjoyed absolute power. No organ enjoyed absolute power. Absolute power. So basically, we'll talk later on also, these things will come. There is history behind adoption of written constitution. Like why US adopted written constitution? Because you should know that US was a colony of UK. So when it was colonized by UK, so there were lots of exploitation and arbitrary exercise of power, absolute rule of state. So they experience all these things. No? So when people experience these things, so then this is how they decided when they got independence to adopt a legal document that can work as a guide to the government so that the government should not become as exploitative as it used to be during colonial time. This. So that way also you should know that in case of, let's say, that gave rise to significance of written constitution. Any country which gets like all those colonial countries in developing countries, when they got independence, they also adopted written constitution. When we got independence, we also got written constitution. The rationale will remain same. And that is how written constitution is needed. In that written constitution, question comes, let's say, whether it is a flexible constitution, it is rigid constitution, isn't it? And how that, what it has features in the constitution, how they have come. This is how we have written, let's say, so we'll go to this, how Indian constitution, and then constitutional supremacy, what it is called constitutional supremacy. Then we'll talk like this, so that we finish the legal aspect as one, then this historical etc. And then we'll talk a brief note aspect, what is this, then we'll deal the next part. So I generally used to teach from this part, but today I decided to teach from this because it becomes often very stereotype to start from evolution part. Right? This. So that way, let's say. So then we'll talk about Indian, let's say, about Indian constitution. This, let's say, India also adopted a written constitution. India also adopted a written constitution. A written constitution. Written constitution, which came into effect since 26th January. Since 26 January 1950. 1950. This. When a written constitution is adopted, written constitution was adopted, it was influenced by first constitutional morality of framers of the constitution. Constitutional morality of the framers of the constitution. Second, the global best practices. The global best practices. Next, India, change in paragraph. India went to adopt a system known as India went to adopt a system known as constitutional supremacy. Constitutional supremacy. Constitutional supremacy. It means constitution is the fundamental law of the land, fundamental law of the land, and all the three institutions, all the three organs. Constitution is the fundamental law of the land, and all the three organs should work under should work under should work under the provisions of the constitution. The provisions of the constitution. Provisions of the constitution. Right? So, before talking evolution part, etc., we want to tell that we went to adopt a written constitution that we have adopted called constitutional supremacy. Constitutional supremacy. This, why we adopt constitutional supremacy? Because you know that all the three organs you have, this legislature, executive and judiciary, they will have to work under that constitution, right? But basically इसका मतलब क्या है? Why we are talking like this, right? So you should know that कि UK had parliamentary supremacy. You know this? UK has parliamentary supremacy. What does it mean? In three organs, let's say that you have three organs: legislature, executive and judiciary. In that, legislature of UK is supreme. It is absolute, which one day we'll talk here and there. Let's say that. The parliament is supreme means since it does not have written constitution, it can make any law. This. So their parliament is not bound by law. This is called parliamentary supremacy. But our parliament is bound by law. This, in fact, all the three are bound by law. They will be bound by our written document called constitution. So this is called supremacy of constitution. Right. So, ऐसा क्यों किया गया? इसका अपना एक हिस्ट्री है. You should know gradually. You will know. Today is the first class. We are talking all these things. No, किसका मतलब क्या है? Why we have all these things? This supremacy, etc. So gradually you will understand this. Basically, what has happened? Let's say that if you take then another country is called UK. Sorry, US, and US has judicial supremacy. As we have written that, frameworks of the constitution. Why we adopted a written constitution? The written constitution depends on what you think. Basically, the Constituent Assembly, when any country adopts a written constitution, it will set up one body called Constituent Assembly. And that Constituent Assembly will have members, and members thinking decide what we should have, what we should not have, isn't it? Which provision we should have, which provisions we should not have. That is called constitutional morality. This, the morality of the framers of the constitution. So that's why let's say that as. Plus, they were also influenced by other best practices in the world, or experience of the others' constitution, because you were writing constitution in 46 or 47. Yes. So when you are adopting a constitution in 46, 47, already there are countries which have their constitution. So you should learn from them. This is how we learn from them. What? This is called parliamentary supremacy. We don't have to go into this because it will not work in our country. This is called judicial supremacy because we'll tell you one day why it is judicial supremacy. So because judiciary here is all powerful among the three organs, even if it has written constitution. Our framers of the constitution will try to avoid both, and they will try to adopt a balanced approach so that they can be, let's say, acting as per constitution, and none of them should become supreme. This. Then we have to see whether in our country none of the organ is supreme or it has become like this. That will bring you to entire polity topics. When we'll talk, so you will gradually come to know what has happened. This. So that is what, let's say, we have adopted supremacy of constitution. Right? Which supremacy is strengthened, let's say. This, let's say, this supremacy is strengthened. This supremacy is strengthened by, first, we have Article 13 and we have 32 and 226. Judicial review. This rigid constitution. This. So, are you able to understand these things, what we are saying? These basics? Right. So, this is just a brief outline which later on you will be yourself able to make all these out things. These are बहुत ही basic level की चीजें हैं. And when you develop your knowledge in polity, so these things become very introductory things. At this stage, it may be a bit challenge because somewhere we have to start. When you have to start, we have to start from basics so that you start connecting the things. Now, when we have discussed all these things, constitution, written constitution, why written constitution, supremacy of constitution, then it has its own background, historical background, this which we have to understand. This. So then we'll go to this historical background, I guess, we have written somewhere. Okay, right. So you should know that questions are not asked as far as mains, let's say, mains examination is concerned. They do not ask question. It is not that important. But it is part of the syllabus, so we have to teach it, right? As far as prelims concerned, yes, they do ask questions. Yes. But it is not that important for mains examination. This mains there is a segregation. Gradually, UPSC has adopted two different approach like this. In past, it used to happen, this is, let's say, prelims. This is prelims, this is mains. This. You should know that. So, it will happen like it is prelims and it is mains, that way. Now you should know that so when you prepare for your mains, prelims would be covered. This. When you prepare, so your mains will be covered. That's why people prepared for mains, the prelims covered. Right. Now in recent time, what has happened? This. Prelims going in this direction, Mains going in this direction. There's two different directions. Right. That has increased your challenge like anything. This it has increased challenge like anything because your burden will increase. The prelims questions are being framed in such a way that somehow they are being separated from mains oriented question. That's why nowadays it is becoming challenging to clear prelims more than mains. This, that is what we can consider. So this is what a demarcation of line, right? Anyhow, let's take that key historical underpinnings. This that we say that evolution of constitution. So the factors which influence, right, this Indian constitution. This so historical underpinnings factors started this since Regulating Act 1773, and then it went to till Government of India Act 1935. So basically what you have to know there, major features and effects. That is what you have to know. What were the major features and then what are the, or what were that time effects of them, which you should read from Lakshmikant for prelims, let's say that. So I will tell here, no doubt, but whatever we will tell you, that will be more, let's say, macro things, important things. We cannot tell you line by line the things which are important for prelims, etc. We can highlight you the important things, how it happens, what happens, this, and they will influence the constitution. Some of the features, like say, important aspect is how 1935 Act, isn't it? How once question has been asked, how 1935 Act influences Indian constitution? No. Have you read mains questions, etc.? Not read. Okay. So, other people may have access to portal, and you have this question book. No, you have question book, question analysis. Right. You will get it on portal. It is, you'll ask, they will give you access to that. So only once, twice they have asked questions on just to show you how questions have been asked. like this. Did the Government of India Act 1935 lay down a federal constitution? This this is how once and one more times they have asked, two times they have asked, right? This question. Otherwise, from this part, they have not asked question. You can see that largely if you see, which is more, let's say, comparative constitution is a very important topic. You should know that. And they ask every year almost from this. Even they have repeated, you know this, they have repeated, you will find 25 wala, this it is not updated one. But they have repeated, you will see India, let's say US, and then again you will find US somewhere. This France, US. This, the US, France, France. This time US, France. This. They have asked two times that, so this, it is important topic. So that way you will get the idea, when you read them, so you get idea that which topic is more important, which topic is less important. Accordingly, we should give focus on that. Yes. So that way, let's say that fundamental rights, they are important. In that fundamental rights also, you will find largely Article 19 and 21. Most of the questions in Article 9, they will be linked to Article 19 or either 21. This. So that way the orientation of the paper you can consider. So generally we draw a pyramid, let's say, means how we teach like this. If you take this way, you should also learn. So that way we can tell about the evolution, how evolution has happened. So basically, suppose we started since, let's say, Regulating Act 1773. Then we had Pitt's India Act 1784. Then let's say we had Charter Act 1833. Then we had, let's say that next 1853. And then we had 1858. This. And then we had, let's say that 1861. And then 1892. It is like that. Then we'll avoid other. We had Government of India Act 19 and we had 1935. This. So since questions have not been asked, let's say that from that side in mains, so you should know them in summary type, although you'll read for prelims, so you'll have understanding. Now let's say a question has been asked only from this side. If you take, let's say that. So question has been asked from this side. Now why I have drawn like this, so basically what they have done is, if you read entire analysis, if you see, the first there is centralization of power. It is showing about centralization of power. And it will show about decentralization. It is called decentralization, right? And now, अभी जो हमारा polity है, polity. तो polity में we will read both centralization and decentralization. Right? We will read both centralization and decentralization. तो इसका legacy we will link with this legacy. Will be linked to British time. That is the relevance, right? So there will be some developments which are trying to bring decentralization. There would be some developments which are trying to bring centralization. Yes, that way you will be able to also remember prelims facts जो होता है, right? This elimination, this and that, macro understanding you get. So basically, let's say that when they had already in history part, you read Diwani rights given, isn't it? Mughal gave, later Mughal period, it gave Diwani rights, isn't it? To Britishers, and from there they start. But in polity part, we start from Regulating Act 1773. This way. That way transition you can cover from history. This. So that we can consider. So when they established, it is called Regulating Act. It was first such law to start regulating the affairs of our country. You know that so far British India, it was East Indian Company and it was a commercial entity doing business in India. But when this regulating act was passed, so then company was given political and administrative role. You should know that. First time company is given, the many thing will happen first time, many thing will happen first time. This is prelims question. This, what is happening in a particular act, this. So that way, the first time, let's say they were giving political and administrative power. So when they will give political and administrative power, so then it will result into East Indian Company, let's say that also becoming like a type of government, you know this. When it becomes a type of government, it will be given powers. What powers were given under this? So that is how you should know that. It is called governor, let's say that the governor of Bengal. No, the governor of Bengal was given superior power. The governor of Bengal was given power over other two presidencies, Bombay and Calcutta. Right, sorry, Madras and Bombay. Governor of Calcutta was given superior power over governors of Bombay and Madras. That is how it is. So that you can say this. Then he had executive power, for which executive council was set up. You should know that. So this is how the development you had. So it means that governor of Calcutta was given superior power. It is an act of centralization. It is an act of centralization of power. And then company assuming gradually, let's say, political and administrative power. Other developments are not that important. They are just to add points. Like a Supreme Court was set up and other things will be raised, right? Now, this power was further strengthened by Pitt's India Act, right? And Pitt's India Act introduced dual government system. This dual government. What is dual government? The board of control and court of directors. This. The board of control is by British government and court of directors are companies. Right. The company will now be governed by court of directors and court of directors would be, let's say, governed by board of control. So you establish a governance structure, this, and then company is almost reduced its commercial powers. Not completely, but yes, almost its commercial activities were reduced. It has to work as political and administrative. And then for the first time, British Indian territory, the term they use, Indian territory, British Indian territory. So that way, let's say that it started becoming administrative and political entity and companies' employees were converted into government employees, means civil servants. That is how it happened. And then further power is strengthened. By 1833 Act, what they do? Now here they change the designation of governor as Governor General. This. So here he was given more power, but there they have changed the designation and they say governor as Governor General. So West Bengal governor was known as Governor General. This. And then here what they do is, कि legislative power of Madras and Bombay they took away. मतलब law making power, Madras and Bombay presidency would not have law making powers. This. It is further centralization. First they gave superior power, now they are taking away their law making power. This is called centralization. Yes. And it was further to strengthen this power, Charter Act 1853 was introduced. And in that 1853, you know that they took further steps to strengthen Governor General, and then Governor General executive power and legislative power were separated. This act is known, each act is known for something. That is how you have to know. If you know each act what it is known for, then you will be able to eliminate your options given in the question, let's say, that will help. Plus, in mains examination, they don't ask that way, let's say this, any particular act we do not expect, but although while dictating, we'll tell you some of the things which will help you writing if the question is asked. It is known for two things. One, ki legislative power, executive powers were separated. And it introduced merit system in civil services. And that's why Macaulay Committee was constituted. Right? This. Now this act comes after revolt. You know that revolt happens 1857. When revolt happened, they realized they could not govern this country the way they were trying to govern. Because there will be increase in level of dissatisfaction among people. So how to reduce dissatisfaction of people? Yes, good. So that is how you will do that. इसका आज के डेट में relevance क्या है? Ladakh people are demanding sixth schedule. Should we give them? Right. तो टुडे इसका रेलेवेंस ये है कि उस समय वो लोग दे स्टार्टेड associating Indians. So basically they realized that revolt is result of dissatisfaction. Today you can see it more as protests happening in different parts of the country. It is because people have dissatisfactions. So when they have dissatisfaction, so you have to address their grievances. So then they had colonial. Today you do not have colonial agenda. You have constitution. That time there was colonial agenda. This. So what happens, let's say that they started associating Indians in governance system. So when they have to associate Indians in governance system, so they will have to decentralize. They will have to democratize. This you should know that. And that way, let's say it is called decentralization. So Act 1858 introduced for the first time a democratized system of responsible government that Indian affairs directly came under control of British Crown. And when it came under control of British Crown, then it was governed through UK Parliament. So far it was being governed through UK government. Now it was governed through UK Parliament. When it will be governed through UK Parliament, then one member of UK cabinet was declared Secretary of State responsible for Indian affairs. Try to understand like this, कि UK government appointed a minister in its cabinet that would be responsible to Indian affairs, and then that minister would be held responsible in Parliament of UK. This. That is early stage of parliamentary system that was introduced in our country. This which today you have parliamentary system. So that is how it was introduced, and this is also called responsible government. That's why 1858 is also known as Act of Good Government. If you read Lakshmikant, its heading is like this: 1858 Act of Good Government. This, that is how it happened, right? Then let's say that thereafter we started giving more powers. What we started giving more powers? This is how 1861. In 1861, they did important thing. You know, the power they took away here, they gave it back. The legislative powers of Madras and Bombay given back. It is decentralization. This, that is how it was done. And then you should know that in that representation was introduced. What is representation? What are all these things? This. So they had, let's say, 1853. Then we had 1773. We had governor of Bengal. He was having executive council. This executive council is nothing but think tank. आप इससे लिखो, अभी क्या है हमारे पास? कैबिनेट. Have you heard cabinet secretariat? Right, cabinet secretariat. ठीक है, तो one day we'll tell you about this, and you may be knowing PMO. ये तो आपने सुना ही होगा, प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफिस. राइट, इसका हिस्टोरिकल पास्ट क्या है? ये this historical past start from there. The governor of Bengal was given PMO type facility, right? That is called executive council. And then here, let's say it was separated. What they did is executive council and legislative council. Right. Here it has combined lawmaking power also and decision making, execution also. In 1853 it is called separation of power. Right? You have to study, there is a syllabus called separation of powers. Right? You can link separation of power when it started. This, the first time executive power, legislative powers were separated. Right? But it were dominated by Britishers. Members were from, let's say, British government, not British parliament. They were, let's say, British officials, you know that. Those who were in India, they were the British officials. Right? Now, यहाँ पे हमने representation introduce किया. यहाँ पे representation introduce किया. Indians. Right? When we started introducing Indians, it is called representation. The Indian representation was also started in 1861. The 1861 is known for two things. One is called decentralization and second is called representation. Right? Now, Council Act 1892 is known for introduction of indirect elections. What they did, so in this legislative council, they introduced indirect election, means some rich people, elite people of our society, businessmen, etc., they would elect some members in legislative council. So they introduced indirect elections. That is how. So 1892 is known for introduction of indirect election. So gradually we are democratizing. Right. This, although we do not take thereafter this called Morley Minto Reform 1909, you read in history part, we generally do not take here because that has more historical relevance rather than polity relevance. because they introduce called communal electorate and considered basis for Bengal partition and other things. Let's say that it has historical relevance. Polity relevance, it does not have much, so we generally skip, right? Now you should know that now what happens in 1919, so they convert it into elected assembly, right? It is converted into elected assembly. Why? Direct election was introduced. So a system of direct election was introduced for the first time through Government of India Act 1919. It is another democratization. And elected governments were formed. You know that? Elected governments were formed. So there was assembly also. Then subjects were transferred. The subjects were transferred to division of power, reserved subject, transferred subject. This. So, and then, sorry. Then bicameral legislature was also introduced. So by Government of India Act, we introduced bicameral legislature, elected assembly, yes, and we introduced a system of, you can say that, yes, direct election, division of powers between union and states as transferred subject and reserved subjects. This. And then finally by 1935 Act, we legalize all these things, right? And we taken to another high level. You can consider federal polity was introduced, bicameral was increased in the states. You should know that some more states, let's say that bicameral legislature introduced, election strengthened, universally dealt franchising, that was broadened, right? States were given more autonomy. So finally, let's say that this Government of India, 1935, is known for introduction of federal polity, right? It is known for introduction of federal polity, and it is known for introduction of centralized system. In a way, what they have done, they have gradually decentralized and democratized. So when British rule started in India, it was centralized. But when it ended, it was more democratized and decentralized. And these things will work as a lesson to the framers of the Constitution when they have to adopt different provisions in the Constitution to learn from this history. Yes, where we should have centralization, where we should have decentralization, why we should have it, we learn from them. That is called historical underpinnings. Right? They teach us lesson. Right? And then you also have to know, because then you will be able to have better understanding of our constitution, our polity, why we have a centralized system, why we do not have a centralized system. Some people will say to you that, oh, Indian constitution was made during British rule time, so it is not a sovereign constitution. No, how will respond to that? Right? Or some people say Indian constitution is a Western constitution, not Indian constitution. No, already you may be hearing all these things. How you will understand whether they have the right understanding. That is how it teaches us to have a right understanding. History teaches us to have a right understanding of the things of past so that we can have better understanding of present. And that is how we will summarize. So during that time itself, let's say that movement had started. You know that movement had started for complete independence. This Purna Swaraj, the Purna Swaraj, you know that it was 1929. In 1930 session, Lahore session, it was complete independence resolution was adopted. And already there was a demand for when this, then the idea that Indians should be governed by Indian, left to Indian, this constituent assembly, all these things. So that is how you know that ki ideas started coming to all these things. That is how there is a link with making of constitution part. The next part ki how constitution is framed, etc. So that is what we can just say, summarize. So we'll summarize these things, whatever we have discussed. So let's try that. Historical underpinnings, right? Historical underpinnings are about the major developments between 1773 to 1935, which also influence Indian Constitution. It can be divided broadly into two phases. Phase first, 1773 to 1853. It is a phase of centralization. And phase second, 1858 to 1935, phase of decentralization. Let's phase of centralization. Regulating Act 1773. Regulating Act 1773. It was first regulatory step taken by British government, to regulate the affairs of the Indian territory. Therefore, this act had following key provisions. This act had following key provisions. First, the governor of Bengal was given power over governor of Madras and Bombay. It was considered an act of centralization. act of centralization. Centralization. Next, Governor of Bengal was designated. Governor of Bengal was designated as Governor General of Bengal. Governor General of Bengal. Governor General of Bengal. Next, a Supreme Court was also established at Calcutta. At Calcutta. Next, anti-corruption measures were also taken. Anti-corruption measures were also taken. Like prohibition of gifts taken by companies employees. Like significance, let's say significance. A subheading, significance. This act has its own significance. This act has its own significance. Significance due to following factors. First, it laid down foundation for a centralized administrative system. A centralized administrative system. Next, for the first time, East Indian Company was given political and administrative role. Given political and administrative role. Political and administrative role. Next, the law became basis for successive charters and acts to improve British government control. Next, its overall effects could be seen through Government of India Act 1935 and even after independence that how India still has centralized administration. India still has centralized administration. Centralized administration. It was also remarked by ARC II. right? We say it as Administrative Reform Commission second, right? Means Administrative Reform Commission recently remarked that we still have a centralized system. Right. So we are trying to link also underpinnings. Underpinnings means it is about effects, let's say. What are those developments which have effects on our constitution and governance? That you can say that. That way when we say that we are trying to link it. So even if you should know that we went on decentralization, but still 35 Act is considered act of centralization. Hey, it means that once a centralized foundation was let down, it is difficult to undo that. It is difficult to dismantle that, break that. And after independence, after 70 years, still we have centralized administration, which you will love as district magistrate. One day we'll talk on these things. When we'll take the topics like 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. Right? So we have also topic like 73rd, 74th Amendment. We want to decentralize. Right. Then what exactly has happened? Have we decentralized in 30 years? How much we have decentralized? So whether local bodies are really empowered, right? Our DM is still empowered. These are all the debates linking to this. So that is how we have told on this. This is important. We have told a bit long literature we have told. Then it is one important, it is one important, it is there. Wherever it is important, we'll dictate a bit elaborately, otherwise we'll just mention it, right? So then let's say that Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act. It introduced further changes. It introduced further changes, further changes in governance structure, like first, a system of dual control. A system of dual control was introduced. Dual control was introduced. This is Board of Control. Court of Directors. Board of Control, Court of Directors. Yes. Next, Board of Control. Board of Control. Exercised control on Court of Directors. Court of Directors. Court of Directors. Next, company was managed by Court of Directors. Company was managed by Court of Directors. Next, Court of Directors were controlled by Board of Control. Board of Control on behalf of UK government. On behalf of UK government. UK government. Next, For the first time it was acknowledged. First time it was acknowledged that British possessions of Indian territory, British possessions of Indian territory, that is, British government for the first time expressed its aspiration of political and administrative control of Indian territory. Next, East Indian Company commercial activities East Indian Company commercial activities were drastically reduced so that it worked as political and administrative entity. This, right? So this we can say. Next, Charter Act 1833. Charter Act 1833. It is known for two major changes. First, Governor General of Bengal was designated as Governor General of India. And second, the legislative powers of Madras and Bombay were taken away and given to this Bengal. Right? Change paragraph. This act further consolidated centralization of administration. Right? Next, 1853, Charters Act 1853. 1853. This act is known for two major developments. First, two major developments. First, Governor General, Executive Council separated legislative powers, separated legislative powers, and a separate legislative council was set up. A separate legislative council was set up. Separate legislative council was set up. This legislative council was also known as mini parliament. Mini parliament, as resembled, right, working of a parliament, resembled working of a parliament due to its processes and procedures. Due to its processes and procedures, which were based on legislative processes and procedures. Legislative processes and procedures. Right? See, since try to understand that they do not ask these things, so we don't have to go in details, but you should know that this legislative council, when it was separated, even if it was not, let's say, elected body, but the process, procedures, questions, etc., discussion, deliberation, whatever they had to do, they followed exactly legislative procedures. It replicated like a legislature, and that's why it is known as a mini parliament. A term you can consider. The second point is this act introduced merit system for the first time. Merit system for the first time. That civil services recruitment should be based on open competition for which Macaulay committee was constituted. Macaulay committee was constituted. Right? Macaulay committee was constituted. So this is about 1853. Now let's take 1858. This 1858. This act is also known as Act of Good Government. Act of Good Government. It is known for following developments. It is known for following developments. Following developments. First, the company rule was shifted to the crown rule. Crown rule. That is, Indian affairs directly came under Indian affairs directly came under control of directly came under control of this directly came under control of British Crown. Next, the designation of Governor General was changed to this Viceroy. Next, the Indian affairs came under control of a member of British cabinet, a member of British cabinet, British cabinet, British cabinet, designated as Secretary of State, designated as Secretary of State, Secretary of State. That's significance. Significance. This that's first point. Since Indian affairs came under control of Secretary of State, Secretary of State, who was held responsible, who was held responsible, held responsible by British Parliament, held responsible by British Parliament. This came to be known as a practice of this came to be known as a practice of responsible government. This came to be known as a practice of responsible government. Right? Practice of responsible government. This next. Indian origin British members British members. Questioned Secretary of State in British Parliament. And they tried to expose British government from within. They tried to expose British government from within of its dual standards. Right? You should know that Indian members like Dada Bhai Nauroji type, let's say, there were Indian origin members in UK, and they were members of parliament. So you should know that they started questioning UK government from within. See, in your country you follow democracy, you respect citizens' right, and in your colonial states you exploit their rights. So what rights you give to your own citizens, you take away. It was a kind of shaming, naming type of thing, that, right? It is from within, British government will try to do this is called responsible government like this. That kind of practice, you can say that. Next point, this is since 1858, the strategy of British government changed. Due to revolt 1857. Due to revolt 1857. 1857. This 1857. And they started associating Indians in system of governance. Criticisms. Their main agenda was colonial. And therefore, decentralization was not necessarily aimed at empowering people in India, rather strengthening colonial agenda. Right? So basically, let's say that they did it, but they did not want to empower our people. That was not their real intention. Rather, empowerment was happening by default. By default means you want to strengthen your power, but you have to associate Indians. When you are associating Indians, then they are getting empowered. Then they will feel more emboldened to fight against you. Right? And then you get some experience. If you have any experience of running government, running parliament, running legislature during British time, because when we got independence, we did not have all this experience. That is how we got a bit of parliamentary experience because of these things, right? That way it benefits. Otherwise, their agenda was how to strengthen powers. So that can be considered. Then next we'll talk is Indian Council Act. This Indian Council Act 1861. It was known for two major things. It was known for two major things. Two major things. First, decentralization. That it gave legislative powers back to Madras and Bombay. And second, introduction of representation system. That in governor generals, executive council, in governor general's executive council, Indian representation was introduced. Next, Indian Council Act. Indian Council Act, yes, 1892. It is known for one major development. That is, it is known for one major development, that is introduction of system of indirect election. Indirect elections. That in Governor General's Legislative Council, indirect election was introduced. For some members. Indirect election was introduced for some members. Right? So, basically this is already we have told that these are not that important. We'll find this some changes were introduced. Let's write this. Government of India Act 1919. Government of India Act 1919. This. This known for diarchy. Dual rule. right? So you should know that another diarchy was introduced. Dual rule. First diarchy was introduced in Pitt's India Act, but that was abolished in 1858. I forgot to tell, but it was abolished in 1858. The dual rule which they introduced in Pitt's India Act 1784, that was abolished in Government of India Act 1858. This. So there you can write dual rule of Board of Control and Court of Directors. Dual rule of Board of Control and Court of Directors was abolished, right? In 1858, right? Now, in here what we are trying to do, again we are introducing diarchy, but it is different type. This diarchy is that dual rule. So, basically let's say center. So, this will be controlled by center, let's say. It will be controlled by center. So, center means, let's say, Governor General means Viceroy. So, he will exercise control, right? And that transferred subject will be given to provinces. And they will have autonomy on that. When you transfer the subject, they will have autonomy on that to legislate and do whatever, let's say this. That is an early stage of federal polity, because federal polity is known for division of powers. This, that way it had significance. Now, next is called that this bicameral legislature. This, so it is also for the first time. So it is relevant is it can be considered origin of Rajya Sabha. This. This. So system of direct election. So, right. These are some major development. Then let's further write significance. Although these are all significance point also, but one more will write significance. Elections were held in the country. Elections were held in the country. And elected government was formed. Elected government was formed, which became basis for having experience of an elected government before independence. Before independence, as as the provisions of Government of India Act, 1935 did not come into effect. In bracket, most of them. Next, it became basis for constitution of Simon Commission. Commission, which recommendations became basis for enactment of Government of India Act 1935. Enactment of Government of India Act 1935. Right? So things are, let's say, connected. We started with 1773, then you have to review it. The next act should try to improve over that. The improving over that, there is a centralization. Improving over that, there is decentralization. Finally, it was mentioned in Government of India Act 1919 that it would be reviewed after 10 years. You know in history that they did not complete 10 years. Simon Commission was sent earlier than 10 years. So there were protests. Protests result into lathi charge, Lajpat Rai, etc. You know that these things happen. So that is how you will find the history part. So its link is this, that this is how Simon Commission was sent to review on the basis of implementation of Government of India Act 1919, and then it gave recommendations. On its recommendations, even if there was protest in our country, UK Parliament introduced a white paper, and that is called 1935 Act. This, and that is how today so far, right? This. So hope you are able to understand the things, cope up with the things. No, especially writing part. No, you may not have experience of writing. Not that much, yes, because market में dictation नहीं होता है अब. We are the very, let's say, you can take us like extinct type of teachers. Anyhow, so you say your practice will also happen, plus ultimately you take away these notes at the end of the day. That is how once you have notes, so अभी तो ये basic है तो इतना relevance नहीं है, But where you have the topics which are dynamic topics, where you have contemporary developments, so their notes help you much, because making notes for yourself will be very challenging task. No. To try to write, those people even online, etc., they should also write notes, because it gives you first keep writing practice, but most important aspect is at the end of the day you will have at least 2 such booklets, and that will be your treasurer, because it will help in your mains examination. So today we'll finish here, right? So let's take tomorrow, right? Okay.